I'm sure you woke up and you're like hungover Tuesday, having fun, and it's like, oh wait, now the entire team is headed to the NFL. So a little bittersweet for y'all in Baton Rouge, I'm sure.
Yeah, hey, and you and I talked when we were in Tuscaloosa. We kind of figured that this was coming. Anytime you have a year like LSU had, everybody that that had the year that these players had, they're going to think that their ceilings is pretty high there. They think that their stock's about an all-time high. You got 7 guys right now. It could get up to 9 guys. Let me ask you this before we kind of get started. Who's the biggest surprise out of that group so far for you?
Well, I think it has to be Charles, the left tackle, for numerous reasons. And I don't think we're telling secrets here. I mean, the guy missed, 6 games this year, and not for injury. So I think that's a concern when you have a player that's missed that amount of time and it's not injury-related. Obviously, we'll let scouting departments dig into it, and I'm sure a lot of people in Baton Rouge know more of the story than I do even. But I think you look at that and say, man, talk about a guy that could have benefited from a full season and getting past, some of the issues that caused him to miss so much time. So I think with Charles, he's a good player. He's a good athlete. He fits the profile of what NFL teams want. But I think when you talk about, off field is it's a big category when you talk about scouting a guy and not just, has a guy been arrested, has he failed a drug test. It's getting into things like, coachability, work ethic, maturity, motivation. There's a lot that goes into evaluating the person as more than the player oftentimes. So I think when we get into that, the grade that you see on the field might not match the grade that you get on a guy like Charles. Now, I thought, I know there's been a lot of talk about Jacob Phillips. I was actually asked to advise on Jacob Phillips from a number of people not affiliated with LSU, and I told them just like straight up, what I've heard from NFL teams is you're a day 3 pick. My evaluation is that you're a really, really good athlete who could benefit from being the guy. Michael Divinity is a senior, had a pretty good feeling Patrick Queen was going to declare, so really thought that Jacob could have benefited from next year. But, I mean, you understand the allure, and I think what happens is there's a domino effect. You win a national championship, everybody thinks their stock is as high as it's going to get. Joe Brady goes to the NFL. Joe Burrow is graduating. So you get into this system of or this thought process of, all right, we just lost our boy genius offensive coordinator. We just lost Jesus Christ playing quarterback. Maybe this is as good as we're going to get. And you know this because you've been around the program a long time. Guys, when they see that writing's on the wall, like, oh, okay, and Justin Jefferson's leaving and Grant Delpit's leaving. So it's, okay, well, I better jump while these guys do, because even if Miles Brennan is a really good quarterback, I know Jamar's coming back, Stingley's coming back. The expectation is LSU's not going to be as good next year. And so I think for a lot of players, it's let me jump out while we're at the top of the mountain instead of stick around for what might be a little bit of a reload next year.
And I completely agree with you. I thought Charles was the one that could benefit the most from coming back and playing a full season, playing a season without getting suspended. Phillips is another one. Most people in Baton Rouge, the ones that have kind of been talked about most were Phillip and Queen. I figured Queen would leave, but what type of grade do you have on Queen coming out?
Yeah, I have a top 40 grade on him, and I know that I've upset some people within the LSU football building for that because they felt like that doesn't match what the NFL has, and I've tried to explain myself and make people understand that, mine is a projection of where he'll be at late April. And I think once teams watch from Texas until Clemson and watch Patrick Queen. He gets better every week, and he's exactly the type of linebacker we want in the NFL. Incredible athleticism. He has range. He can cover. He can stop the run. He can rush a little bit. And you can look at all those games, all those top 10 wins against, or 7 wins against top 10 teams. Patrick Queen was it. I think he was the biggest difference maker on defense outside of Derek Stingley Jr. I thought he was better than Grant Delpit. I thought, with Christian Fulton being banged up this year, I thought Patrick played better than all those guys. So I think for him it makes sense. And at linebacker, if your stock's high, and one thing that I've told the agents who ask me about linebackers and running backs, the thing I always say is you're just going to go get hit more. So if you feel like your guy is going to be a top 50 pick at linebacker, I think you got to go. If you feel like your guy's going to be a top 100 pick at running back, you almost have to go, because otherwise, and I know it sucks because, listen, I'm a college football fan too. We want to keep those guys around. It's good for the sport. But for the player, if you're a running back or linebacker, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go put more wear and tear on your knees and shoulders when you could go to the NFL and be probably a starting quality player. I think Patrick Queen, with Bill Moses going back to Alabama, I think he's got a chance to be maybe a late first-round pick, or if not, an early second-round pick once we get him through the testing process. I think he's going to do really well in those situations.
I wholeheartedly agree with you about running back and linebacker, and not everybody can declare early, but if you can at that position with the way football's going, you almost have to. And that's why Clyde Edwards-Helaire absolutely had to put his name in this draft. His stock is so high right now. The way the NFL is going, I think Clyde steps in from day one and makes an impact, whichever team drafts him. I don't even think that you have to have a certain team that runs a certain offense. I think he can do so many different things really, really well. Where do you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now?
Man, I would not be shocked if he goes late first. I really would not be. I have him graded in the second round, but I'll tell you, man, he's special. I don't know that too many people get caught and they're like, oh, he's 5'7", 5'8". I do not care. He is a difference maker. We saw it in the first half against Clemson. Okay, they're going to go a 3-1-7. Watch this. We got a bowling ball in the backfield who can catch. He can run with power. He's bouncing off tacklers. He has such good vision. And everyone you talk to about Clyde is that he's just a good dude. He's a hard worker. Everybody loves him. So in a running back class that's really, really good, by the way. I mean, you got Jonathan Taylor and 6,000 career rushing yards in there. You got J.K. Dobbins, who is one of the most improved players in college football this year. DeAndre Swift. We're waiting to hear from Travis Etienne. Cam Akers is declared from Florida State. There's a lot of good running backs in this class. I think for some teams, it just depends on the positional value. It's easy to look at the draft order right now and be like, there aren't a lot of teams that need a running back. But as we know, that could change. A team like the Baltimore Ravens, Mark Ingram's getting a little bit older. Maybe you look at Clyde and say, let's just get a younger version of this dude. And they'll start sharing carries, and then in a year or two, it's his job. Because, Jacob, you played the position. Man, at running back, the earlier you can get paid, the better. Because there's a belief right now even that running backs aren't getting second contracts, or that there's going to be a shift that running backs in your second contract, it might be a 2 to 3 year deal that's very incentive laden, because we're seeing guys like Todd Gurley, Alvin Kamara, they're not living up to expectations on the second contract. So I think for Clyde, it's got to suck as an LSU fan. I've been through it as a Texas fan. You see guys leave like right when you're getting to that pinnacle of, oh my God, we could be over the top next year. You hate to see it, but the good thing is you have Coach O, who's one hell of a recruiter, and I'm sure the next running back waiting to get those touches is going to be pretty good too.
Catching up with Matt Miller from Bleacher Report. You can follow Matt on Twitter at NFL Draft Scout. Okay, it's probably the longest draft interview you've done, regardless of what the location is, but especially in Louisiana, not talking about Joe Burrow, him being the number one pick to Cincinnati. Look, we all assume that it's done, but I want to ask you, can you see a team being motivated enough and having the assets to move up if they wanted to take Joe Burrow number one and Cincinnati moving out of that top spot?
There are teams that have the assets. I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is, will Cincinnati want to? We could spend 5 minutes talking about the connections between Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. His Heisman speech, he's just a kid from Southeast Ohio. Well, Cincinnati's not quite in Eastern Ohio, but it's in South Central Ohio. So getting him back, 2 hours from home in Athens, Ohio, I think that's a big point for both he and the team. And then you have the connection of Zach Taylor, who was a quarterback in Nebraska. And we know Joey's two older brothers, they played football in Nebraska. So there's a lot of connections there. And I think with Joe, he showed all season long, there's that line between being confident and not cocky. And he's got it. If Baker Mayfield were sitting there smoking a cigar after winning a game, Twitter would be aflame, hating the guy. But Joe does it, and it's the coolest thing we've seen ever. So he's just got that right swagger, that it factor that you want at the position. So I'm sure that there will be teams, whether it's the Miami Dolphins, who have 3 first-round picks, or the L.A. Chargers, Carolina Panthers, the Raiders have 2 first-round picks. I think there will be teams that call, and you have to. You got to call and say, hey, y'all interested in moving back a little bit? And I can't see it. And I know Cincinnati, I'll be there next week at the Senior Bowl. They'll be coaching Justin Herbert. They'll spend all week with him, and you got to wonder, what if they fall in love? But I can't see Zach Taylor not falling in love with Joe Burrow. We've already heard the Bengals coaches talk about Joe Burrow on the record of, man, yeah, this guy checks all the boxes. And when you add in the connections of him being local and then the Nebraska connections there, it makes too much sense not to happen. It's like when Kyler Murray declared last year. I'll never forget, reporting, hey, he's going to play football, he's going to declare for the draft. And, oh, by the way, he'll be the first pick because Cliff Kingsbury loves him. I feel like it's the same thing this year. It's like, oh, well, Zach's going to love Joe, so might as well just go ahead and write that one down in ink.
So, Matt, you can't see us here in studio, but you said the L.A. Chargers, and I did a little, slight dance here. Just please tell me the way that the Chargers can find a way to get Joe Burrow. They sit at 6. Do they have anything they can give Cincinnati to get to that number one spot?
I mean, no, your good players are free agents. Like you can't, they don't need Melvin Gordon. They got Joe Mixon. So I think with the Chargers, obviously, y'all got that soccer stadium you're trying to fill up, but there's just not enough picks. They only have 7 this year. They don't have an extra first, so it would be
them all.
You would get into like that Washington Redskins trading up for RG3, where it's like, here, take our next 3 drafts. Like here, just have it, or Mike Ditka trading up for Ricky Williams. So I mean, I look at a lot of teams like, oh my God, Burrow will be so good for them, and that's the thing with him. He's going to be good for everyone, and I think the Bengals are smart enough to understand that. It's like, why let the pretty girl date somebody else? Like, she's interested in you. Go ahead and take her home. So I think that's Burrow right now. He's the belle of the ball, and which is amazing because in September I would have told you no one would jump Chase Young. It was like whoever has the first pick, they're going to take Chase Young, and here we are, a kid who I thought would be a 3rd or 4th round pick back in August, and now he's just rock solid. He's going to be the first pick.
Matt, say all the LSU juniors, seniors, all the guys coming into the draft test perfectly. How many potential first-round draft picks do they have this year?
Oh, a good number. I mean, I think you can start at the top with Joe. Obviously, it's going to be an early pick. I think Delpit will still be an early pick. I know his play this year probably wasn't even where he wanted it to be, but I think Delpit will be. Fulton will be. So you got 3 right there. I think you can make a case for Caleb on. If he comes out, we're still waiting on him. So there's Justin Jefferson. There's 5. And then maybe Patrick Queen. That's 6, maybe Clyde. That's 7. So 7 that I feel are at least in the conversation, which is pretty good. I think that's pretty close to Miami's record. What's crazy is you can say the same thing about Alabama has a ton of guys too. So between Alabama and LSU, I mean, it's just going to be half the draft, half the first round. And it's always funny, man. People are like, you have an SEC bias. Like, no, guys, I have a good football bias. And this year, guess what? It's going to be Ohio State, LSU, Alabama, and Clemson. That's the first round of the draft this year. And it's fitting that, 3 of those teams are going to be, 3 of those teams were in the playoff, and another one would have been, if not for some injuries.
There's no way we can let you out of here, Matt, so we've got one more for you without asking you a New Orleans Saints question. Obviously, being here in Baton Rouge, what do you see the Saints doing coming up this draft? Obviously, they've got some question marks at quarterback with Drew's contract, but they've got a really good young nucleus of players as well.
Yeah, man, I really think that you look at it and where do they go with free agency? Right now they're picking at number 24 overall. So with Teddy a free agent, with Drew Brees a free agent, it could go so many places. I think if everyone comes back like you would expect, I think they have to go wide receiver. Just with the depth of this draft, there's been, all the smoke about bringing Antonio Brown in. He's unhireable at this point. So I think you could look at someone like KJ Hamler at Penn State, Jalen Rieger, Henry Ruggs. Those are guys that fit that mold of, okay, you want to add some speed opposite Michael Thomas, who, if he needs to catch 150 passes next year, I'm sure he could do it. But in an ideal world, you'd like to open things up a little bit. I think we've seen that in the playoffs where, teams can try to take Mike out of the game, and he's still going to get his production. But you would like someone who could open things up more. If the receivers are gone, that's where I would pivot and look at the corner position, try to get some depth, get some youth. Because I think safety, Xavier McKinney from Bama would be tempting because say what you want about Marcus Williams, there's been some plays in the playoffs and in other big games that he's unfortunately left on the field. So with his contract getting close to up, I think you got to start thinking about getting a third safety in there who can maybe eventually be that starting free safety.
All right, there he is. Matt Miller does an outstanding job over at Bleacher Report. You can follow him on Twitter again at NFL Draft Scout, our go-to draft expert here on Hanging with Hester. Matt, always appreciate time, my man.
Likewise, guys. And hey, congratulations. If you get bored next week, drive over to Mobile, and the first 10 beers are on me because you guys had a hell of a year. LSU is now 4-0. The games I'm at, and 4-1 on games I pick you guys to win. So I'm the good luck charm, I think.
Hey, you lost me at 10 beers, but I appreciate it.